of biology session. Okay, so now here we will be looking at the coronary, the diseases and conditions that are associated with the heart. So to start with, we have what we call, can someone read this word for me? This one. This one. Atheroma. Keep it up. Atheroma is just the accumulation of what? Fats material in the walls of the coronary what? Artery. But this one, it has got another name. The other name is atherosclerosis, or atheroma. Then there is sclerosis, Sclerosis is just the hardening of the walls of the arteries due to the presence of what? Fatty material. Then we have thrombosis, which is what? This is just the blockage of the what? The coronary arteries by mixture of blood clots. This can be fat material or even fibers. Then a blood clot within the blood vessel is called what? A thrombus. Then angina. It's not vagina, it's angina. Yes. Angina means pain. These are the sharp pain that we usually receive from the heart. Yamamvekera mu chest. Badusaka mleo mfoko. Mapeni yamamvekera mu chest. We call them as in angina. So this is just a sharp pain experienced in the heart and the left arm after exhaustion due to what? The presence of atheroma or thrombus in the coronary artery. So every time you have a clot in your arteries, you experience this pain. Yes. Then we have the embolus. You know what an embolus is? An embolus is just a moving clot which results into a thrombus. This pushes out of place by the heartbeat. So every time there is an heartbeat, this thrombus, it will go and it will cause some congestion somewhere. Have you ever heard of congestive heart failure? If there is congestion of blood to the heart, what causes that? It is these thrombus, the clotting substance, that will cause a lot of congestion once they get stuck at one point, the embolus. Then what is heart failure? Heart failure, we can call it myocardial infarction, which is just a condition where the heart fails to pump blood due to limited supply of oxygen caused by the blockage of the coronary arteries. Then again, if the heart cannot receive oxygen again, that one is called what? Ischemia. But it's not up to your level, but just know that the heart fails. That's heart failure. Then excessive fat intake. It is the fatty. For example, if someone has been eating too much fat, chubby, someone becomes what? Obese, like Dumbo. That person will have problem with the heart, the blockage of the coronary artery. Those people that smoke also, because in smoking, in the cigarette, there is what we call a stimulant called what? Nicotine, which tend to promote and accumulate cholesterol in blood. Then we also have emotional stress. Those that become emotional stress, that one also. The body secretes high levels of what? Adrenaline during what? Emotion stress. Hence, this promotes accumulation of cholesterol in the blood stream. Lack of exercise. Now, look at what happens when there is too much cholesterol in your bloodstream. Have you seen to the lumen? The lumen becomes smaller. And then you have blood clots. Meaning that these tubes, they are becoming dirty. They need to be cleaned. Yes. Yeah, so that's how it goes. Then how can someone prevent the coronary heart disease? Number one, you need to avoid taking excessive intake of what? Fatty foods. Number two, avoid smoking at all costs. Number three, avoid emotional stress, because emotional stress produces what hormone? Adrenaline. Yes. Then exercise regularly. Yeah. Now let's look at the blood vessels. What are these blood vessels? These are tubes through which blood moves around the body. And there are three types of blood vessels. Number one, we've got arteries, veins, and capillaries. Okay. What are arteries? Arteries, these are what?
vessels that carry blood?
These are vessels that carries blood away from the heart to the other parts of the body. They have the following characteristics. They carry blood away from the heart, and they carry what? Blood at high pressure. Then they have a thick wall and a narrow lumen with a thick wall which helps them to withstand the pressure of the heart. And then they have no valve, since the pressure from the heart is enough to keep the blood moving in one direction. And then these ones, the lumen for the artery is small, like it's they've got a thin lumen, but for the vein, the lumen is what? Wide. Okay, so then they have the blood. These are the blood vessels that carries what? That carries blood toward the heart from the parts of the what? From the parts of the body. Okay, so they have the following characteristics. They carry blood toward the heart. They carry blood at low pressure. They have thin wall and provide a wider lumen. These have got a wider lumen, these ones. Then they have valves to keep blood moving in one direction and prevents the backflow of blood. Then they all carry deoxygenated blood except the pulmonary vein. They appear regular in section and in a cross section. Then they are located near the skin surface than the arteries. Okay, so the following, this is how they are. Have you seen the arteries? Look at them. The artery, the lumen. Look at the lumen. It's a thin, but here the lumen is what? Wide. Yes. Have you seen? In terms of muscular, all of them have got muscles, but this one, the arteries have got more muscle than the veins. Then, in terms of even the endothelial cells, so when they ask you to differentiate, these are the things that you should be talking about. Talk about the fibro layer. Talk about the lumen. Talk about the muscular. Which one is more muscular? Arteries are more muscular than vein. Yes. Okay. Then we've got the smallest one, which are what? Capillaries. Capillaries, these are the smallest blood vessels, and they form what we call a link between arteries and vein. The artery approach the organ of the body, and they branch into a smaller artery called what? Arterioles. These arterioles, they're the one that keeps on subdividing until they form what we call capillaries. So capillaries, they've got direct contact with the tissue cells. And this is where now we get to have gaseous exchange, like here when you check. Have you seen that this is where we've got the exchange of gases? The vein now, we've got this blue color here, which is carrying dirty blood, and this one, red color, which is carrying clean blood with oxygen. And between the tissue and the capillary, this is where gaseous exchange occurs.
Yes.
When gaseous exchange occurs, then blood is now cleaned, and so on and so forth. So this is how the capillary works. So when the blood from the artery reaches the capillary bed, the plasma is then filtered out of the capillary into the spaces around the tissue cells. The fluid around the tissue cells is called what? Tissue fluid. Tissue fluid, it has the following. Number one, it has what we call the bathing tissue cells, the thermoregulation of tissue cells. Thermoregulation means that it regulates the temperature, facilitating what? Exchange of material between the blood and the tissue cells. It also dissolved food and oxygen diffuses from the tissue into from the tissue fluid into the tissue cells, while carbon and urea diffuses from tissue into the tissue fluid. Okay, so now let's look at what they do. We have the name of the organ and the blood vessels that they carry. The heart has got what blood vessels does the heart contain? The coronary arteries. Yes. Then the lungs contain what blood vessels? Pulmonary artery and the pulmonary vein. The liver contains what blood vessels? Hepatic artery and the hepatic vein, or rather hepatic portal vein. Yes. The kidney has got the renal vein as well as the renal artery. Yes. Then, so for the heart now, we now look at the vesicle where we have now blood. What is blood? Blood is a tissue that is made up, it's a tissue, it's a connective tissue which is made up of the red blood cells, white blood cells, and plasma, as well as what? Platelets. Okay. So the red blood cells, the other name for the red blood cells, we call them what? Erythrocytes. What's the function? They transport oxygen and small amount of what? Carbon dioxide. They are made in the bone marrow in an adult. It can also be made through the liver. And so these red blood cells, they can be produced in the liver, especially in infants, babies. And they have about 5 to 6 liters of red blood cells. This is in males. 5 to 6 liters it is in male. In female, it's 4 to 5. It's 4 to 5 liters. Yes. Then the lifespan, they have about, they can only live to 100 days to 120 days. If at all they are not being destroyed before their time, which is called hemolysis. And this one, when the red blood cells are destroyed before their time, it also causes what we call yellow fever in kids. Because it causes sickle cell anemia and jaundice. Then biconcave disc, they've got the shape for the red blood cell. It looks biconcave, and it has, when the red blood cell is just being formed, do you know that it comes with a nucleus? But as it matures, when it matures, the nucleus disappears and the hemoglobin takes up. The function of the hemoglobin is that it increases affinity. What is affinity? Affinity is the ability to bind to oxygen and carbon dioxide, but more of oxygen than carbon dioxide. So what we see here, we've got hemoglobin plus oxygen, which is giving an oxyhemoglobin molecule. So this is what happened. This is how the erythrocytes looks like. Okay. Then we've got the white blood cells. The other name for white blood cells, these are what? Leukocytes. These are cells that defend the body against what? Infection. They are made in the red bone marrow, the lymph tissue, the lymph nodes, the tonsils, the thymus, as well as the spleen. So these are the sites where these can be produced. And then 2 examples of white blood cells are, we've got phagocytes and lymphocyte. So the phagocytes, what is their function? These ones, they defend the body against what? They defend the body against infection by engulfing and digesting the germs or the parasite. Then adaptation, how do they adapt to their function? Number 1, they've got the lobed what? Nucleus, which makes engulfing of germs easy. Engulfing of these bacteria is easy. Then they've got what we call the amoeboid movement, which makes it possible for them to move toward the germs or the pathogen. Then they've got no fixed shape, but they can change their shape, making an engulfing of a foreign body. So this is how they look like, as if it's a 3. For engulfing. Then we've got the lymphocytes. What's the function of the lymphocyte? These, they defend the body against infection by producing antibodies and antitoxins. So antibodies, these are proteins that destroy germs of foreign bodies, while antitoxin, these are proteins that neutralize any form of poison that the bacteria, germs, or a pathogen will inject in your body. Adaptation, how do they adapt? They've got the presence of a large nucleus and the thin cytoplasm. Okay. Then the cell membrane looks like that. We've got the thin cytoplasm and then the nucleus. Then we've got what we call platelets. Platelets, what are platelets? These are thrombocytes. Thrombocytes, what is their function? These, they help in blood clotting. Yes. These are fragments that are formed during the manufacturing of red blood cells, and they're important for blood clotting. The steps that are involved in blood clotting is described below. Number 1, when platelets are exposed or damaged due to maybe someone has got an injury, these tissues, they will release an enzyme called what? Thromboplastin or thrombokinase. Then when that is done, then the thromboplastin act on the protein. It acts, the thromboplastin, it acts on the, where was I? Thromboplastin, it acts on the what? Where? Okay, sorry for that. The thromboplastin, it works on the protein called prothrombin, changing to an active what? Prothrombin. Yes. Now, this active prothrombin, it acts on another plasma protein called fibrinogen, changing it into an insoluble form of fibrin. Now, this fibrin, they produces what? Fiber. A fibrin is just a protein, you know that, right?
Yes.
When it produces fibers, these fibers, they are the ones that will seal up the wound. The wound will be sealed up by the fibrin. They form what we call a mesh. They form a mesh, which is just a net to prevent the blood from what? From going out. So they will make the blood to clot. Questions from there? So, yes, so as we meet again, we'll look at the blood plasma and the blood groups and the donor, which blood can donate and so on and so forth, all those. Then we'll be concluding this topic that we've started today. Otherwise, how was it?
It was okay.
It was interesting.
Okay, it was extremely awesome. Okay, how was it?
That's fine.
Okay. Okay. Alawa Monze Telekono. Okay, so we've come to the end of this session, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you've got any question, you should leave them in the box and the comment box below, and ensure to subscribe. Bye. Yes, and share.